Welcome to the Grow My Salon Business podcast, where we focus on the business side of hairdressing. I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker, and I'll be talking to thought leaders in the hairdressing industry, discussing insightful, provocative, and inspiring ideas that matter. So get ready to learn, get ready to be challenged, get ready to be inspired, and most importantly, get ready to grow your salon business. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker, and it's great to have you here with us today. My guest on today's podcast is Pedro Inchenko, who, along with his best friend and business partner, Jonny Orthona, started the Ena Salon in London's Covent Garden, as well as the offshoot education brand Allilon Education. Now, I think it's fair to say that in today's workplace, there's a lot of talk about what exactly is a modern salon culture? And as a salon owner, how do you find the balance between offering more flexibility to the team while at the same time managing a business that accommodates a client's needs and still run a profitable salon business? I often talk about the theory of that, but there's nothing better than talking to someone who is actually doing it. And that's why I'm speaking with Pedro in today's episode. In today's podcast, we will discuss what it takes to create a modern salon culture, the importance of remaining curious, and the need for flexibility in a modern salon environment, and lots more. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Pedro.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be here.
Mate, it's really good to have you here. I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a long time. We've known each other for a while. And I know that you've got so much wisdom and so much experience to share with our audience that they're going to get a lot of value out of. So, Pedro, I know that you're well known in the UK and you travel a lot to different parts of the world as an educator, but inevitably there'll be lots of people that don't know who you are or what your business is. So can we just start off with a sort of a 2-minute overview? Just give us your sort of 2-minute backstory of who you are and what your business is all about.
Yeah, no problem. Currently, I have two businesses. I'm a co-owner, so I have a business partner who's called Jonny Orthona. Both businesses are almost like both sides of the hairdressing coin. So one is very consumer focused, which is Ena, which is the salon. And then we have the trade focused side of the business, which is Allilon, which is focused on education, the hairdresser. Businesses started in 2009. We currently have 35 people working at Ena and 6 full-time educators working for Allilon.
Okay, fantastic. All right. I didn't realize it was 2009. That's gone quick, hasn't it?
Yeah, 13 years.
I still think of you as a young business owner. And so I wanted to ask
So do I.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question about that in the context of being a young business owner, if you can look back over the years, and ask you, what do you wish you'd known before you'd opened a business?
Great question. I often pose this question to a lot of people that I come in contact with for like pieces of like gifts that they can give you, and things that they could go back and whisper in your ear and give you some advice. What would I whisper to myself? I would probably say be patient. No, it's a long road and there's going to be things that you're going to get wrong and you're just going to learn from them and adapt from them. And overall, you'll probably, have a lot more confidence in your decision making. Because I always think of it like, when you start hair, you're in your apprenticeship. And when you start your first business, you're just starting from zero. You're in your apprenticeship again. So just be patient and kind to yourself, I'd probably say would be the best thing.
Yeah, good advice. What from a business point of view, we're going to talk a lot during this podcast about the sort of culture of your salon. But before we get into that, if you had to sort of sum up, in a sentence or so, what your sort of overarching philosophy of what a salon should be all about, how would you answer that? Like when you and
Um,
Jonny decided to open Ena, what was it that you wanted to be different about it? Because it is different. You have got something quite unique and special there.
yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning you're always looking for like that USP, aren't you? You're always thinking about, is it the aesthetics? Is it, the way that the clients feel when they come in? What is the vibe? But I think the more experience I have in it, it's just about people. We're all about like investing in the team and ensuring that they've got all of the opportunity um, to be the best version of themselves. And that's not just hair, that's all aspects of life. And I think, I think what clients feel when they come in is a team of people that generally feel loved and cared for. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, it's sort of, I know your business
Mm.
on the inside and see a lot of the stuff that you do. And I know what you've just said is the sort of thing that other people might say. But all I would say to them is that I think you've taken it to another level. And as we get into this podcast and talk
Mm.
more about the things that you have in place, I think that that will become apparent. Let me ask you, here we are at the start of 2023. A lot of businesses have had a lot of challenges over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. Um, what changes have you made to how you do business, in 2023 based on what we've been through the last couple of years?
Great question. I mean, for our experiences, Anthony, there was always this thing. I don't know if you remember it. Like obviously working for a cool, big company, everyone was employed. But within our industry, there's a big divide between employment and self-employment, rent-a-chairs, booth rentals, all of these kind of different ideas of how the structures of a salon can work. What I felt coming out of difficult times was I've always had an employment structure at Ena. Like everyone's employed. However, what the last few years have taught me is that it's just a method of payment. It's just the structure that really is not really important. It's more about giving people freedom, whether they're employed or self-employed. And that sounds a bit crazy if they're employed. The rigid structure of society says, okay, well, you work 5 days a week and we set you your shifts. And, if we need you to work weekends, you work weekends. And I think the biggest shift for me was coming out of it is that generationally, I think people need more to be more fluid in everything that they're doing. Like the rigid structures of business have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but people, again, they want the security of employment. They want their holidays paid. They want, the security if anything happens to them, illness, that they're looked after. So I think the biggest shift in my mind was to actually create a system that actually does both. So it gives people security and
Mm.
gives people freedom. So one of the things that I did when I got back from lockdown was to just, I think I wrote 5 questions and I sent them individually out to each team member. And questions were like, do you want to work weekends? Like, what would you change if you could change something about your job? Like, how do you feel about the hours that you work in the day?
Mm.
How many days a week would you like to work? And these are all questions going out to employed team members. So it was a real shift in my mind. And I think it was coming from me being sensitive what they needed from me as a
Yeah.
leader.
And how did they respond to that? What changes did they want?
Um, I mean, first of all, they were like, the reason why I do what I do is because I love feeling, the reward of people feeling grateful. When you give and someone you feel that gratitude back, it's amazing. And I think their first instinct was like, wow, you're telling me that I can do a 3-day week, and I've always done a 5-day week. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what's the catch? I'm like, there's no catch,
Yeah.
just talk to me, tell me what you want, and I'm fortunate. It may not be possible for all businesses to do this, because obviously the size of the business enables me to almost like look at it like a puzzle. So if you're working with a small team, there's huge implications to the business for business owners that do that. But when you've got 35 people that you can almost put like a jigsaw puzzle in place, like, Evie doesn't want to work weekends anymore, but Jake really likes working weekends. Evie doesn't want to do early shifts anymore, but Jake really likes doing early shifts, and you can look at it all together and get all of the information. It's like you're asking for the data. Give me the data, and then let me create a system which can, give everyone. And I said to them, I'm not going to guarantee everyone's going to get what they want, but I'm going to do my best to achieve it. And if I can't do it now, I'm going to ensure that it's in my mind for the future. And it just worked. Some people have gone from 5 days to 2 days. Some people have stayed with 5 days. Some people don't work weekends anymore because they never liked it. So it's about, for me, it was what was born out of that rigid structure prior to COVID. What COVID created for us was an opportunity to be more loose and more free with the way that I think about business.
Yeah, that's interesting. So talk about the trade-off between shorter hours and therefore earning less money. Was that cool? Were people just prepared to, well, look, I only want to work a 2-day week and I accept the fact that therefore I'll earn less money? Or were they sort of thinking, I only want to work a 2 or 3 day week, but I still expect to earn the same amount of money? Because that's often where the sticking point is, isn't it?
Well, I think what it is that a lot of them aren't doing nothing in their idle, the time that they've allocated for themselves. They're looking at it as an opportunity. So I've got a guy called Sam who's always had a passion for photography.
Yeah.
Now he's producing, like, this is one of his pieces in the background. I know not everyone can see that. One day it may get viewed live, but basically Sam is a photographer and he goes around taking photos of hairdryers, in toilets, in random places all over the world, in restaurants, and he's giving the hand dryer an identity, and that was, and he's created a book from it, and now he goes around to exhibitions, and he sells his work, his prints, and out for him, he's doing maybe 3 days a week now in the salon, but he's giving his time to the love of his other passions. And I think a lot of people have done that, like coming out of that moment. I think a lot of people have questioned whether they're in the right space, they're in the right industry, they're in the right career. And I think if you're just too rigid with them, like, no, you have to be here for this many days, the business can't change for you.
Yeah.
What happens? You end up losing amazing people because of your rigidness. Yes, the earning potential is decreased, but they have earning potential elsewhere. If I'm confident as a business owner that I can feel, if someone's working 3 days a week, I can find someone else to come in and cover them 2 days elsewhere. It might not happen overnight, but I'm confident enough to say that the business will be better for it by having happier people that work with inside the organization, that are doing other loves. I've got team members that are doing nutrition. I've got team members that are doing life coaching. I've got team members that are going off and exploring different industries, but at the same time staying with Ena, which I'm really proud of, because
it's fantastic. Yeah. Because I think that's the challenge a lot of salon owners have is seeing how they can make it work. And you have to make it work. I mean, yes, it might create a little bit more of a challenge in terms of putting, staff rosters together, but you've got to find a way, because at the same time, you'll have salon owners saying to me, how do I attract staff, or how do I, keep staff? And the answer is you need to approach a business in a different way. You need to offer more flexibility so that, you know, in terms of recruitment, people go, wow, do you mean I can get to choose the days and the hours? Yeah, you can. Or, you know, in terms of retention, that they have the opportunity to go off and do other stuff and work part-time in the salon so they can still earn an income. So it's a win-win for everybody, I suppose, is what I'm saying there. Okay. Your business, you know, before we got on the phone on this call, on Zoom, sorry, I was saying that I really wanted to talk a lot about your team and your team culture, because you have this great culture in there. And, you know, I always make some notes before I get on the call just to sort of center myself. And, you know, I wrote down about team culture and, you know, for the listeners, I've been into, you know, your salon multiple times and you know some of your team. And I just wrote down that it's cool and it's laid back and it's professional and there's a strong element of team there and there's a strong element of the client experience. So if I'm sort of summing up what your business signifies to me, they were the sort of first 5 or 6 words that come to mind. So talk to me about, how do you create that sort of culture? Because when I go into your salon, and I haven't been in for a little while, it just feels good. It feels comfortable. It feels like home. It feels professional, but it also feels like you're in an environment where the people that work there are really passionate and really caring about what they do. So talk to us about how you create that sort of culture.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of books. I've been to a lot of seminars, you know, and I've taken little gems from everywhere that I've been and everything I've read. But a lot of it is just creating happy people, you know, and to do that, it takes a lot of investment and a lot of energy, you know, like salon owners out there will know, you know, it is, you know, it takes big shoulders, you know, to run a business. You know, it's not an easy process. For, you know, I have 2 young children, you know, and I don't mean to be patronizing, but I'm also in a way a father to 35. You know, the way that I'm looking at them and thinking about what they need and what development and what guidance that they need. And so, you know, I do think that, you know, a lot of it is, I keep going back. I always say, and it sounds really crazy when I say it, but our product isn't hair. Our product is people, you know, and the sooner as soon as that switched in my head, I knew that what needed to happen, you know. And Ena is an amazing place for clients to come, because Ena is an amazing place for people to work, and they get support, you know. And I knew very early on that I was you know, at the beginning of the business, I was trying to be all of the things to them, you know. But as a business owner, it's very exhausting to be all of them things, you know, to many people. So there was a tipping point where I knew that I needed to source people that could help, you know. So we do a lot of outsourcing for our support to our team. It's not just Pedro, the support to 35. You know, it's Pedro who is finding all of these amazing people that can help support the team. You know, so I can go into more detail about what
give
we
me some
have.
examples of what sort of people you've brought in.
I mean, we have physiotherapists, we have osteopaths, we have nutritionists, a few nutritionists. We have a variety of life coaches. And when I say life coach, a variety, I mean, there's life coaches. Those of you who've experienced life coaches, I do think there's genres of life coaches, you know. Some are more in tune with well-being, some are more in tune with business, you know, and there's a you know, spectrum, and there's many of them, and we've had many of them. you know, in our time. And then business coaches such as yourself, you know, like we bring in and we outsource. And then we have personal trainers. And probably the most recent one, the one that came after the end of the pandemic, was a psychotherapist. And I knew that the skills that I have, I'm very sensitive. You know, like I think we all become therapists as hairdressers over a certain period of time. You know, but to have them skills that are needed, you know, with everything that's been happening in the world, I had to put my hands up and say, I need someone who can come in. And when I know that someone's struggling, you know, with depression, with anxiety, with, you know, dark thoughts, you know, I'm not equipped to cope with that. So I found someone who has been working with us for the last 2 years. And what I do with my leadership team is that they have all of these tools available to them. So when Evie's got 5 people that she's mentoring, she knows that if she's chatting to a certain individual that she's mentoring, that she's got this ability to say, oh, you need to see an osteopath. Your back's not right. Or, you know, someone's struggling with their sleep. Maybe it's their diet that needs to be looked at. You know, someone's having, you know, had a really bad traumatic experience. Okay, let's go and see the psychotherapist. You know, like, so it's that Evie has this, she's not just now, she's in a leadership role, but now she has the ability to have all of these tools to be able to facilitate the needs of our people, you know. And I think that's probably one of the things that Ena does behind the scenes that no one really sees, which creates that, you know, feeling that you're feeling when you come in, family, togetherness, you know, the energy that's in there, but everyone's being professional at the same, because they're cared for, they're loved, you know.
And what? So the company pay for that?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So it's not so much that you bring in, I know it's probably a bit of both here. It's not so much that you bring in people to do a talk. It's that, and that you'll do one-on-one things where you'll send people to a specialist, whether it's a physiotherapist or a, you know, chiropractor or whatever it is, dietitian, etc.
Yeah, 100%. We allocate a budget for that and we finance it, you know. And in a way, you know, like, people need to be doing this for themselves. However, we all know that that's not the case. You know, that we all know that, you know, oh, okay, I know I need to see this person, and there'll be an excuse for it. You know, there'll be, oh, I can't afford it, or I don't know the right person, or whatever that excuse may be. There are people who are active and will look to kind of support themselves, which is amazing. However, I think the majority of us struggle with that. And we don't ram it down their throats, you know, like, it's very much very soft, you know, like, this is available to you when you're ready. If you want me to reach out, I can make this happen for you. And sometimes I have, you know, I've had team members that have said, no, I'm good, no, I'm good, no, I'm good, no, I'm good, I'm good. And then they get to a point where that, yeah, you know, I'm ready for that now. You know, I need to see someone about this or that, or whatever it may be. You know, so it's I just think it's an amazing tool. And if you can budget for it, instead of budgeting for your advertisements for new employees, you know, use that money, you know, to maintain the ones that you have. You know, so that whole thing about clients, isn't it? It's like it's all about the retention. Why is that not the same for our team? You know, in 13 years, I've never had a team member leave to work in a local business.
Wow.
The only time they've ever left would be a change of career or a change of location, as in internationally wanting to live somewhere else. And I can't fix that.
Yeah, of course you can't. Yeah.
I'll fix that desire.
Yeah, that's,
you know, but no one's never gone down the road or a mile away and taken their clientele because they're looked after.
Yeah. So it's a very human, you know, face of your business, as opposed to, because I didn't realize you were that you'd done all those things, but I am aware of the next part of culture that I was going to talk about with you. And as you're talking, I'm thinking the bit that I'm sort of big on is this bit here, which is the documenting and the defining and the designing of your culture. So, and when people say, well, what the hell do you mean by that? It's things like mission statements and, you know, a vision and all that sort of stuff. And I know that you've also done an incredible job of doing all that, you know, the sort of, you know, the written element, designing, this is what our culture is going to be. But what you've just talked about with having these other resources that you can send people to is very much the sort of the human element of what being in business is all about today. And with those sort of staff retention, you know, numbers that you've just given us, I mean, that sort of speaks for itself. So talk to us a little bit about the things that I just touched on. So, you know, the vision statement, the mission statement, designing your culture, what you've done and why that's important to you, and what that looks like. Because again, when I say what it looks like, I know your brother's an artist and he's helped, you know, put some of that together, but it's this holistic approach to what you do. That's what I'm trying to say. It's this holistic approach, which is really something special, and it's all part of your brand ethos, isn't it? So over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. I think it must have been about 8-9 years ago. I entered one of your classes, and you know, we went through, you know, one of your, I think it was a management class, and it was all about, you know, mission statement, vision statement, and all of these kind of things. And I really went away from it, and I was like, don't have that, you know, or what we do have, does it really represent the brand and the company? And what I've learned over 13 years is that changes, you know, like this mission statement that we have now was probably the 4th generation of mission statements, you know, because we're changing, you know, we're constantly evolving. So those of you who haven't written it recently, I would just encourage you to revisit it. So this is, I mean, Ena's mission statement at the moment. So this is the mission statement to the clients, is to make you happy in our home. A passionate team of like-minded people providing a welcoming experience to an uncompromising standard. And then we have an employer's promise, you know, on the back of that. I think this is something that when I went away from your class, Anthony, I started looking into all big corporations, you know, like what they have, what they don't have, how they structure it. And I think a lot of it was in the hospitality industry, which I thought they had an amazing, you know, way of delivering. And I think a lot of hotels in New York came up, you know, like in the Google search. Yeah, all of this kind of stuff, you know, the Waldorf Astoria, all of this kind of like this idea of like service and delivery and team. And I've done a lot of, you know, research in it. And I mean, the employee's promise, I mean, based upon the things that we just spoke about, I hope I'm fulfilling my employee's promise. At Ena Salon, our staff is the most important resource in our service commitment to our clients. By applying our values of teamwork, professionalism, family, passion, integrity, generosity, and humility, we nurture and maximize talent to the benefit of each individual and the company. Ena Salon fosters a work environment where diversity is valued, quality of life is enhanced, individual aspirations are fulfilled, and Ena Salon's family is strengthened.
No, I love that. See, I think that is fantastic. And a lot of people, they will listen to this and I think, well, yeah, I'm only a small salon. I don't need all that. But as I always say to them, that's how you become a big salon. If you want to be a big salon, you have to lay this framework of defining who you are and what you're all about, because that's what attracts and keeps people, you know. But I'll get people saying to me, you know, they'll call me up, you know, help, you know, I can't attract staff or I can't keep staff. And it's sort of like sometimes they want a magic wand, and there is no magic wand. It's like, let's go right back to the beginning and look at your business and look at who you are and what you're aiming to achieve. And, you know, sometimes hairdressers go, you know, mission statement, vision statement. I don't need all that. I'm a hairdresser. But all it is a vision is, well, what do you want to do? That's all it is. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to create? Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? That's what a vision statement is. And a mission statement is, and how are you going to do it? And that encapsulates your values. And as I always say to people, it's one of those things that you're better to have it than not have it. And
And
because the
just
more you put these pieces in place, the more it defines who you are and what your culture is. So
and just by having it, Anthony, it doesn't mean that you don't have the same struggles that everyone else does.
yeah,
I still have struggles finding the right people.
yeah.
I still have struggles, bringing in enough clients for everyone, to eat around the table. It's like I can sit here and say, oh, look at what I've done. But trust me, just by doing it doesn't suddenly, lose the struggles that every salon owner has, on a daily basis,
Mm.
and the pressures that we have. However, what this does, it just brings clarity to me on a daily basis, a reminder of why we're here, what I'm doing, and the team. It gives them clarity of being a part of something. Because a book that I was reading recently, called Sapiens, it was really interesting, and what I got from it is a really hard read. I mean, my wife was watching me read it when I was on holiday, and she was like, and I was reading stuff to her and what I was learning, and she was like, no, I don't want to know. It's too heavy. And I was like, but what it told me was the difference between us and any other animal on the planet is that we have the ability to tell stories. So by having the ability to tell stories, we can move lots of people in a direction or a belief, and that same thing's been happening since probably, I think it started around 200,000 years ago when, Homo sapiens had the ability to start using their imagination and tell stories. Prior to that, we were just foraging. And when it got to that point, I always like using the analogy where if you had 50 chimpanzees, they would be able to say to each other, there's a lion on the ground, everyone run up in the trees, there's danger. And then there'll be an eagle in the sky. They'll be like, everyone, get down. There's an eagle in the sky. There's danger. So they'll be able to do that. But the difference between them and us is that we could say, oh, you see that lion? If we offer it a sacrifice, our harvest next year will be prosperous. It's just a story.
Yeah.
If you get enough people believing in that story, and it can actually create a movement. And Ena is a story.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, that's great. I love that. I love that. I wonder where you're
And
going with that. That's fantastic.
and we have an obligation as leaders to tell stories,
Mm.
that inspire people to move and to do things and be a part of something.
So defining all those things, writing those things down in terms of your culture, your employee promise, your mission statement to clients, etc. That is all part of the story. It's defining the culture of your
People
brand.
want to feel like they belong to something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if they don't feel like they belong to something, they don't have purpose.
Yeah.
And that's when depression, anxiety, all of these things kick in. But fundamentally, we've evolved too quickly for our own good. We've gone from the middle of the food chain 200,000 years ago to the top of the food chain, and we still haven't, our minds hasn't had the ability to adapt to that. Hence, we're living in these huge mega cities and global structures that our minds just aren't evolved enough for. And we're all looking to be foragers still. That's why when we retire, we end up in the country. We're going back to what feels like right.
Okay. So
sorry, I'm going off track.
yeah, no, that's okay. So what else do you have in place there? I mean, I've pulled out mission statement and vision statement and employee promise. Anything else that you've got there that you've sort of documented? Because I mean, I've seen it, not just talked about it, and it looks beautiful and it encapsulates again your whole brand, and that's I think also what makes it come to life. It's not just words; it's a feeling, it's a way of being.
I mean, the vision we broke it into 5 sections. It was to become, to have, to do, to give, and to share. I mean, I'm not look, when this is, when I read this, it's more about, like, what my to become is different to your to become. What my to have is different to your to have. So for Ena, it's to become recognized as a company of forward thinkers who are inspiring innovators and environmentally aware. To have uncompromising standards within the company to help create a secure and sustainable business, to do our best as a company to serve our team and help create a sustainable and secure business of like-minded professionals, to give opportunity and education while nurturing our team, to share our knowledge and experience with clients and colleagues to help achieve growth within our business.
Fantastic. Really
So
good, really good. What do you, there's a lot of talk these days, I often talk about them, Gen Z. I know you've got kids that are Gen Z, I've got Gen Z children as well. And a lot of people have Gen Z staff members. So what I wanted to ask you about is you've been in business since 2009, and it's been a fairly tumultuous time, especially the last 3 or 4 years. But what are the changes that you see in Gen Z compared to previous generations in the workforce?
Great question. I just remember when I was just started out a bit soon. I was 17 years old. I was a teacher by the time I was 18, 19. And my manager at the time was a gentleman called Stephen McKinder. He was in his 40s at the time. And I just looked at him and I was just like, wow, like, he's the same age as my dad, but he's just so much younger than my dad. Like the way the industry, what it does, what I recognized at that point, it keeps you so engaged with youth.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful for that feeling of, feeling like I'm staying connected. But recently, I'm struggling with it, if I'm honest. I'm on the other side. I'm 43 years old, and I'm starting to feel like I'm on the edge of feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And what I've come to realize is that, like, it is because I'm moving away in generations. And as much as the industry keeps us connected to youth, by never living in their time, you really never really truly understand how they think and how they operate. So I'm feeling very uncomfortable. And some of your viewers may be thinking, oh, 43, that's not old, I'm X, but I'm just saying, this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like I'm on the edge of something. And I have to keep reminding myself of, like, my value is experience and hopefully a little bit of wisdom and, like, all of these things that you're bringing to the table. However, I don't like the way I sound sometimes. I don't know if you feel that, Anthony. Like, I feel like when I speak out loud to my team, I'm like, did I say something wrong? Was I PC in what I said? Was it? And sometimes I refer back to some of my younger team and I say to them, how was that? Was that all right? And I need the reassurance.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I get that.
I'm not sounding like my
that
granddad.
that awareness in itself, and acceptance that things are changing, and what's the word? And being prepared to evolve and being prepared to change. And I know when we were talking about this recently, not on today's call, but a couple of weeks ago, we were having a chat about this, and you gave me a really tangible example about that. I don't know if you can remember it, but you were talking about verbiage. You were talking about certain words that you use that you just use habitually when you talk to team members, and that either someone pointed out to you or you had a recognition yourself that actually that's maybe not cool to talk like that anymore. Can you remember where we were with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to be clear on the way that my brain works, I always want to be the better version of myself than I was in previous years. So I'm always looking at, like, development, like modernizing the way of my leadership, parenting. The book I'm reading at the moment is The Book You Wished Your Parents Had Read.
Yeah.
It's like I'm I'm always trying to be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And recently this has kind of led me into the realization is that because I'm maybe not, my verbiage isn't quite on point. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit on the edge of, my communications not being current. I do, I've looked into race. I've recently read a book called Me and White Supremacy by Layla Sayad. And also on the other side of things is more like the feminism, so I've recently read a book about Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. And having a 13-year-old daughter, I just feel like it's relevant. I need to understand what is going on in the generation, and not just in age, but also with race, with gender, all of these things. So a lot of my readings and listenings recently have been more associated with that. Like I really want to understand, I want to get my verbiage right. I want to make an effort to understand the struggles of Black people, and it's called BIPOC, so Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. I want to understand all of these things more. So that's just, I think it's just born out of my curiosity. I've always been curious, as I was that child that my mum and dad always tell me is like, why is that like that? Why is that like that? And it's just continued.
So what's a change you've made? What's an example?
Where I would maybe, I used to, I have this thing because I come from like the Bob Marley. I just listened to Bob Marley all the time when I was a kid. So I don't know if you've noticed in my emails, and sometimes I say one love at the end of things.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I don't know, that's staying. I haven't really worked that one out, but sometimes I say love you, or thanks beautiful, or I'd use the word beautiful a lot. And for me, I'm thinking like I'm lifting someone's confidence up.
Yeah.
However, generationally, it may be received like that, but it may not be.
Yeah.
So I'm being more conscious about the way I communicate with, especially, I would say, younger girls. I recently had 4 19-year-old girls start as in their apprenticeship. And one thing I've done, which I wanted to stay connected with, is I'll be like, what are you listening to? Like, what artists are you listening to right now? And this is me obviously again worried about the generational gap growing, but I'm genuinely curious. Like, I want to know what that generation musically is into, and I love stuff like that. Like I love being curious about how other people are thinking. One of my favorite sayings is replace judgment with curiosity. And I try to live by that all the time. Like judgment doesn't help and benefit anyone. The person being judged doesn't benefit. The person judging doesn't benefit. So no one wins. So all we really should be doing is being curious about how that person thinks and feels and wants to identify as. It's like, it's the curiosity of it. Like what has it been like, to be in that person's skin, throughout their life. And I think curiosity is for me is something that I try to always focus on.
Okay. That's really interesting. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how different cultures use different terminology. And in the UK, for example, especially in the north of England, a lot of people will call people love.
Yeah.
And it's sort
treacle.
Yeah, they'll call them all sorts of things, sweetheart, darling, whatever.
Yeah.
And what might have been appropriate for one generation is not necessarily appropriate for another. And so there has to be a degree of constantly being curious, as you've just said, and analyzing and thinking about, am I sounding old? Am I sounding out of touch? Does this sound condescending now? Do you know what I mean? And in many cases it does. Okay, so look, I'm fascinated with all that, but I know that other people will be interested in the business side of your business as well. So I want to diversify into that a little bit. From someone who's been in business since 2009, and the salon industry all over the world is essentially a small business industry. You have what is considered a large salon with, I know you used to have pre-COVID up to 50 staff, and now you're down to, I think you said 35, but that's still considered a big business. But I want to ask you this question here about profit margins. What profit margin do you think a salon, in your experience, should realistically achieve? Because I know you don't necessarily teach business, but A, you are a business owner, and B, I know you travel a lot for education. So you have quite a wide range of salon owners that you come into contact with. So can you put some numbers around that from your experience?
Yeah, of course. Just to be clear, since 2009, I've never been over 10% profit.
Never been over, right? Okay, yeah.
Been at 9% for quite a few years, but fluctuating between 4 and 9, I would say, for a lot of that time. Where the difference is, how can I say, because we're so invested in people, a lot of the time I'm developing generations, so to have these 35 that we have now, there's probably like 5 or 6 generations within them, as in 4 or 5 guys, being apprentices at the same time, coming through together, then the next 4 or 5, then the next 4 or 5, and the next 4 or 5. So you've got a generational, team, and because of that takes a huge investment, to develop people from within. So a lot of our profit margin has been affected by that, and then by having people, taking them on straight away, maybe not having enough clients to kind of feed them straight away, has a detrimental effect on it all. I wouldn't change any of that, because my philosophy is if everyone's feeding their families and there's still enough for us to grow and develop as a business, then I'm happy. I'm not looking for 15-20% profit margins if it compromises the values and the mission and the promise to the team.
Yeah. Well, no, on those sort of figures, you're sort of above what the average salon is making, whether you're talking in the US, UK, Australia, wherever our listeners are. You'll pretty consistently hear, numbers about in the middle of what you said, about 5%. But a lot of salons make no profit at all. A lot of salons are, what is termed a lifestyle business, meaning that, the owner drives a nice car, gets some paid holiday and pays himself a decent income. But in terms of there being something left after that, a lot of salons are just break even. So, they're a lifestyle business. So
at the moment, I'm forecasting for the next few years to be break even because of all the loans that had to be taken out to survive COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of there's going to be 5 years of repayments of quite large loans just to kind of stay in the game. So I would have expected them type of loans to open a second salon, not to just survive the first one. But that's the cards that we've been dealt, and we're being positive, and like I said, everyone's feeding their families, so we're good to go. And I've just signed another lease extension for 15 years.
Okay,
so
good.
I'm in the building for another 15 years, so I've got no choice.
Okay. What I know retail is a big part of your business, and you do retail really well. What percentage of your total sales are coming from retail, and is that changing? Post-COVID and more online shopping, etc. Are you seeing any change in your retail business?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Ena is very retail focused. I know I've traveled the world, taught hairdressers, some of their percentage of products to service sales is just like, oh wow, up in the 50s. I've been like, half of their business is retail. That's not Ena. Ena is always operating between 10 and 15%. We don't really like have this culture of targets in our business, if I'm honest. We have a very self-motivating structure, and we understand that everyone is individual. Some of the guys, they do a large percentage of the retail on their own because they love it, and there's the others, we all know them. We've all got them in our salons that you can teach them, you can motivate them, you can inspire them, you can try so many different things, and they're just never going to be that person. And something that I've learned in football coaching for youth, my son's in the football team, is just to focus on what they're good at, praise, for their efforts, and that same can be applied in adult psychology as well. Like, let's not just focus on what they're not doing. That's all they hear. Let's focus on all the other amazing things that they do, and celebrate that, and then accept the fact that it is where it is. But I don't know what the industry standard is, but it's around 12% our retail sales at the moment.
Well, that would be, from my industry awareness, globally, you would be about where they are on average in the Australian market, above where they are in the UK, above where they are in the US, depending on who you talk to. Okay, obviously you get salons that, as you alluded to, some of them are unicorns, literally, that will do 50% of their revenue in retail sales. But, traditionally what you hear in the UK is something like 6 to 8% of total revenue in salons is coming from retail. And in the US, it's a similar figure. Whereas for whatever reason, in the Australian market, the salon average, retail as a percentage of turnover tends to be higher, more about where you are. How important is the retail line you've got? Is Davines, isn't it? Davines,
yes.
I know you have a strong relationship with them, and the branding of Davines and the branding of your whole salon in terms of what it looks and feels like all feels very cohesive. There's a real fit there, whether it's who you are as a brand. They seem to, represent the same values. How important is that to the business?
Yeah, I mean, what we find is that when Allilon, the education company, our education company, travels for Davines and teaches, and we just get sent to like-minded people. Like you're all part of a tribe, and like-minded people end up gravitating towards each other. So Ena is the flagship for Davines UK. It is the two brand identities are completely, in sync. I think the best way of describing it is like, you need to feel proud of the association. Like, it's like you're standing next to your mate and it's like, yeah, this is my mate. And you feel proud to be able to say that's your best mate. And I think that should be the thing that you feel when you're choosing someone. And not everyone's best mate will be Davines. It's about understanding what your best mate looks like and what values they have and what they represent. That's important. So we met Davines about 15 years ago, and in the UK, they weren't on the radar at all. London is probably one of the hardest markets to break into. They're in probably about 60, 70 countries at the time, but they didn't really have a footprint here at all. But we just loved what they stood for, what they represented, and we've just been with them ever since. And they've grown into a very well-respected, company that we've always seen it, but now other people are fortunate enough to see it more as well. So yesterday I was at their launch of their new academy and head office in King's Cross in central London, and it's just they used to work out of an office in our salon in the top floor, which was, 5 meters by 5 meters. And now they've walked into a building and it's just so impressive. It represents the company, and it's what they deserve. And now there was 3 people 13 years ago that worked in the office. Now they're up to about 50 people in London. This is just London, a subsidiary of the UK.
Yeah.
So we're really proud of their growth. They've helped us grow to where we've got, and we've hopefully been a part of helping them grow to where they've got as well.
Yeah. Okay. Before we start to wrap up, a couple of things I want to ask you about. What first one is leadership. What's the most important thing that you've learned, over the last, since 2009 when you opened, as a manager, as a leader? If there was one, I know we opened with something sort of similar to this, but I really want to focus on the leadership side of it. What's the most important thing you've learned as a salon manager or as an owner?
For me, it's to be present, to be there. Like actually creating time to interact with your people. Like it's I actually get a little bit depressed when I don't. It's really hard one. It's like the more and more, the less contact I have with my people, the more I go into a hole, and it's even harder to get out of that hole because you've just like you're self-loathing a little bit, like I haven't contributed, I haven't helped her. But as soon as you jump out of that hole and you start helping people, for me, that's the key. It's like just to be present, to listen, to understand, to be curious, to be sensitive, to the team's needs, not just work, but all aspects. But there's a line. I've also learned there's a line. You have to be careful how involved that you get. Hence the creation. I think that's probably what helped me move into creating a team of people to support their needs when they need it, because it's too much to take on for one person, to take on that many souls to help them in their journeys.
Yeah. Okay. And also from advising other people. So a young person listening to this who's thinking of opening their own salon, what bit of advice would you give them if there was just one thing that you wanted them to take away?
You're never going to be ready. So just do it.
There's a point where you just jump, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, like when I look back in 13 years to what I know now, but it's also, do it for the right reasons. People feel like that's the natural stepping stone. Okay, I've done that. I've achieved success in my, now the next step is to be a salon owner. It's not for everyone, exactly. And you'll soon find that out, if it's not for you, because it's a real shock to the system. And I've known some amazing hairdressers in my life that have jumped to do it and then literally jump straight back in. It's like, no, don't like look at that. That's too much. So yeah, just make sure it's what you want and you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like you feel like it's the next thing to do. Some people will have that awareness to be able to make that choice. Others will struggle with knowing that the only way they're going to find out is if they do it. So just do it. Maybe you weren't ready for it. If it didn't work out, maybe you jumped too soon. So it could be something you could revisit in the future. But yeah, just make sure it's what you want, really what you want.
And what about someone at the other end? So a 50-year-old, 55-year-old, whatever, listening to this, what advice would you give to an established salon owner to stay relevant?
Just make sure the stories that you're telling are inspiring.
So back to the whole thing about curiosity. And
if you don't tell stories that people want to be a part of, it can sound like saying it's a story can be quite, in a way, you're cheating people. I don't know if you're misleading people, but don't see it like that. See it as in to tell a story is to inspire. To inspire is to give people purpose. So never feel that you're doing something wrong by inspiring the next generation to be motivated and be present in what they love doing.
Yeah.
And that's our job.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. What do you wish you were better at?
Marketing.
Okay, sorry, I don't give you any advance warning on these questions. I just sort of
I thought me and my business partner Jonny, we've been fortunate to be born into a education background. So like education, some salons don't have that, and they're great at the marketing side or the developing people to be busy stylists side. Like where education was always a given for us. So I wish I was better at the marketing side of the big business, because I feel like even though I think I'm quite good at telling stories to motivate my team, I'm not very good at telling stories to the world about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And some people are incredible at telling, and marketing themselves, their business, their people, so we are, like we're it's Ena and Allilon are amazing. I just wish more people saw it. And that comes down to potentially, us. For example, Allilon at the moment, through what happened with the pandemic, Allilon has diversified in that moment and it's gone digital. So we have like a subscription business and a digital business. So our education was 100% physical previously, and now it's kind of come into the digital world. And what we've produced, I think, is incredible. However, when not enough people see it, does that really matter how good it is? Like you want it to be seen by many and experienced by many. It's an amazing education tool that the industry, we believe, will benefit from. But it's just, so we're not very good at telling our stories to the outside world. So I wish I was better at that, marketing ourselves.
Okay. Well, whereabouts can people connect with you on Instagram or other social media channels?
So Allilon Education is
how do you spell that one? Because I know
Allilon. My dyslexic side has to kind of look at it. So it's Allilon. So Allilon. So Allilon is ancient Greek for the idea of sharing one to another, and Ena is modern Greek for one, as in my Bob Marley statement.
Ena is E-N-A.
E-N-A, and that's modern Greek for one. And that's again, it doesn't mean one, it means one love, one team, one dream.
Okay, cool.
When I speak, you speak. So they're both, even though they're two separate entities, their owners are the same, myself and Jonny, my best friend and business partner. His attention is more on the education business, and I'm more salon focused, but we overlap. He's in salon supporting the leadership team. I'm doing shows and seminars for Allilon. So we overlap, but our priorities are on the individual business.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I'll put those links on our website, growmysalonbusiness.com, and in the show notes for today's podcast. So if you listen to this podcast with Pedro and have enjoyed it, then do me a favor, take a screenshot on your phone, share it to your Instagram stories, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Pedro, thank you so much for being on this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast.
It's been amazing, Anthony. You're one of all them people that we talk about. You're one of them people that support me and the team in doing everything we're doing. So forever grateful to you. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate that. It's been good talking to you.